In this video lecture, the next Java lexical element we'd like to consider is blocks, which implement the containers with which Java implements classes, methods, and various other logical structures. Okay, let's get started. A block in Java, or any other programming language, is simply some group of 0 or more logically related statements enclosed within a pair of curly braces, as we can see in the diagram here on the right. We can think of a block as being functionally identical to a single statement, and in fact a block can appear in any place that any one statement can. However, a key difference between a block and a statement is that a block does not require a terminating semicolon. In fact, putting a semicolon after a block's closing brace will result in a compiler error. As suggested by the diagram, blocks represent containers for Java statements. As shown in this outermost block in green, a block can contain statements, other blocks, or even both. Although blocks can be nested, as shown here, blocks cannot overlap each other. As we'll see shortly, or maybe you have already noticed, blocks are how Java implements things such as classes and methods. We spoke earlier about classes and methods being two types of containers in Java. Well, the curly braces of a block constitute the boundaries of such containers, with all their statements inside. We also use blocks in Java to implement various logical selection and looping constructs, such as the ones listed here. We'll formally introduce these later on in the course, but we'll take a quick look on the next slide to see how blocks are used for these structures. Finally, this block syntax with statements inside curly braces is by no means unique to Java. In fact, this type of structure is common to C, C++, PHP, JavaScript, the processing language, and many others. So the message here is, if you learn this idea of blocks and get comfortable with it here in Java, you'll have a big leg up in all the next languages you'll learn. This is but one example of many we'll see in this course, of certain basic concepts being common across multiple programming languages. Here's another look back at our Hello World program from week 1, with apologies for my scrawled markup. Notice that we had 3 separate blocks at work. The outermost block for the class itself, which is shown here in blue, and 2 nested blocks for the methods, main and print greeting, which are shown here and here in red. Notice that in all 3 cases, blocks are delimited by an opening and closing curly brace pair, and that the blocks can be nested, but there is no overlap taking place. Here are multiple code examples of where we'll be seeing blocks used by Java. All of these block examples represent containers for various logical constructs. Notice that all of these have identical block structures, an open and closed curly brace pair, with some further Java statements contained within. You've already encountered these first 2. This one is the bare-bones structure of a new class, and below it, this one is the bare-bones structure of some new method. These other ones we won't be seeing for some time yet, but they represent the various Java programming logical structures: an if-else construct, a switch statement, a while loop, and a for loop. Again, the common thread in all of them is the idea of a block of statements enclosed within a curly brace pair. If you've already programmed in C or C++ or JavaScript or PHP, for example, you'd be forgiven for thinking these look familiar, because they are actually similar or dead identical in those languages. So once again, learn this well here in Java, and you have a big leg up on multiple other programming languages. Again, we'll get to these logical constructs down the road a bit, but for now, just recognize that these are just additional examples of blocks in practice. In terms of coding conventions for blocks in this course, I have 1 strong suggestion and 3 requirements. Whatever you do, when you are writing your code, make sure that you always match up your opening and closing braces. If you type an opening brace, I urge you to get into the habit of typing its closing brace right away. After that, you can fill a block with any statement content you desire. The reason for the suggestion is simple. Once you start adding lots of code inside a block, and the braces become more and more visually separated from one another, or your code becomes more and more deeply nested, it can be extremely painful to chase down a compiler error resulting from some missing or unbalanced braces. Instead, just set up the braces to begin with, then let your block expand with all its added code. The first requirement is to make sure that you use a consistent braces style at every level. This just makes your code that much more readable, and in fact, many software companies may have coding standards mandating this. Here on the right, we can see the two predominant allowable styles. In Style 1, the opening brace appears directly after any preceding text, and the closing brace is aligned with the text that opens that block. In Style 2, by contrast, the opening brace appears on the next line, but is still aligned with the opening text, and the closing brace is again aligned with the opening brace. These two styles are kind of like Coke versus Pepsi or PC versus Mac. Some people feel strongly about one, others feel strongly about the other. Personally, I prefer Style 1 to Style 2, and you'll see all of my examples adhere to Style 1. Either style is fine and correct. I really don't care which one you use. The only thing I'll require in this course is that you pick one style which makes you happy, and then use it consistently in all your code. The second requirement will be that you indent everything inside a pair of braces consistently, uniformly, and without exception. 2 to 4 spaces is pretty typical, and I wouldn't suggest using tabs, as those can kind of come out funny in some editors or Canvas. Also, make sure that you use the same amount of indentation at every new nested level of code. The reason for this requirement is that it's considered a good standard coding practice, and it helps us to better see and visualize the hierarchy of our code as it becomes more deeply nested and complex. Take a look back at the examples on the prior slide for more examples of how this should look by good conventions. The third requirement is to always align each closing brace with the beginning of the statement which opens it. Again, this is just a good coding convention, but it helps us clearly see the extent or boundary of any block of code. This is easiest done if you get into the good habit now of closing a brace pair as soon as you open it, then adding the content. Consider these 3 requirements as being coding standards for this course, and I will expect your code to adhere to these from this point forward. So pick a braces style and stick with it always. Remember to nest your code inside those braces, and always align your closing braces. Okay, having said all that, I think that's it for now on blocks.